world of handmade business can be tough when trying to monetize what you love. We've got truth bombs and motivation to help you find your way through. Passion to profit, let's start today, 'cause the world needs what you create. Tune in right now, it's your shot to learn how to be a handmade boss.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to How to Be a Handmade Boss. I want to know, and I want you to let me know over Instagram DMs, because that's where I spend the majority of my time. I want to know, has anyone been walking around the house or walking around the grocery store singing the theme tune? Because I have. And someone actually said to me, I've heard that song before. What is it? And I'm like, you definitely haven't heard this song before. Unless you have a handmade business, in which case you might have. So yeah, it's been really funny. And my other half, also Ash, he's been kind of humming it around in the shower and in the bath and stuff. And I've been like, oh, catchy then, is it? So today I want to talk about the question, which I get a lot, which is, what should I sell? And it is such a loaded, open-ended question. And a lot of the time, it's really dependent on a lot of different things. So I'm going to be going into it. But basically, when people say, what should I sell? And I will caveat this by saying that actually, on YouTube, so on my YouTube channel, there's like an analytics and back-end fanciness that they tell you, what your viewers want to see from you, and da-da-da-da. And always Etsy trends is like the number 2 thing that people want. So basically YouTube is essentially telling me that every single week I need to make an Etsy trends video. But what I kind of want to tell them is, hey bud, the Etsy trends are not changing every week. They're not really changing that much at all. And just a very quick note on trends. I really do not like trends as a kind of e-commerce, expert, I suppose. I really don't like this idea of trends. I think it's a good idea if you have a very different kind of business, bar a handmade business, because with trending clothing, for example, or trending makeup trends, you are going to naturally see an uptick in items being purchased that are along those trends, and maybe even dupes of particular high-end products, right? So I don't like trends because the very people who are coming to Etsy to look, they are looking for something unique. They are looking for something customized, personal, something that naturally you aren't going to find on your Boohoo, on your ASOS, on any other kind of generic high street and or e-commerce websites. So they're not going on to eBay looking for trending things. They're not going on to Amazon looking for trending things. They're coming on to Etsy. And also, and it's not just Etsy either, but they are looking for that unique, customized, personalized thing because they are looking for something different. And if they wanted to have the same thing as everybody else, they would go to the stores that sell them, which will be in their droves, because obviously when a trend comes along, everyone and their dog seems to be jumping on the bandwagon, right? So, and also what I will say here as well is that the last 3 years that I've been looking at trend reports and all those kinds of things, and not, don't get me wrong, I do trend report videos on my channel just because I think it's a good idea to kind of, keep the algorithm happy, but also to let you guys know what the general consensus is. The problem is with a lot of Etsy YouTubers, gurus, the big ones especially, I'm finding, is that they do these trend report videos and then like probably 75% of the, I'm doing air quotes here, predictions that they come out with don't come to anything. And then if you've taken action based on their advice, you're wasting time, you're wasting energy, you're wasting a lot. And the funny thing is that actually the last 2-3 years that I've done these trend reports is that sustainability and being very eco-conscious has been really in the top 3 when it comes to the top trending kind of themes, really. So that being said, the whole trending products thing doesn't really fit in with the whole sustainability aspect, because naturally, if a product isn't within a trend or isn't trending anymore, sales are going to drop off, and eventually you're going to have to either discard it, put it on a massive sale because nobody wants it anymore, you know? So whilst there are style guides and an influx in maybe certain Pinterest trends, and actually Pinterest is a fantastic place to go to look for trends and things like that, I would argue that it is much more valuable for you to make something that is evergreen, that is a product that people will always want, that people will always value, and that always has some kind of unique selling point to it, which is what I call a USP. And I really do think that trends, when it comes to e-commerce, I think, like I said, fashion, styling, makeup, yes, that's very, very different. But when it comes to, you know, like for me, for example, jewelry products, I've always opted to go for timeless, minimalist, customizable styles that mean I don't have to be making new products all of the time to account for varying trends. Okay. So going back to the question, which is, what should I sell? Well, this is something that I would say the first port of call would be to identify what you can make to sell. And you might have come onto this episode with a bunch of things that you can make, and you're maybe not really sure which one you should go down. You know, you might have listened to some of my other episodes or some videos of mine or been on some of my lives, which, by the way, in the Facebook group, I'm live every single Monday, unless it's a bank holiday, in which case I'm probably making a cake and eating it in my socks. But you might have heard me talking about niching, and you might have heard me talking about USP, target market, and you might have come on to this episode feeling a little bit lost, and feeling almost a little bit like, I can do 2 things, I can do 3 things, I can do 5 things. Which one of those things should I really be leaning into? But if you're not, I would say the first thing is to make a list of things that you can make, things that you can do. And if they're different niches, that's fine for now, because we can narrow that down later. Okay, so that would be step 1 under the what should I sell umbrella. Step 2 here, I would always look at how sustainable it is for you to continuously make these things day in, day out, week in, week out. This is a question that I think a lot of handmade business owners will not ask themselves, and they will open up, let's say, off the top of my head, I can think of a knitted baby clothes shop that I semi-recently worked with, and it all started off lovely and they were getting orders, and then the orders started to creep up and they were like, okay, I'm at capacity now. She raised her prices. We did all of the things together that would slow those orders down. It did slow them down, but literally her business was growing so much, so fast. And it ended up being like, I cannot keep up. Like, all I am doing from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. is knitting. And we explored all of the options of hiring help and all that kind of stuff. And it just didn't fit in with her lifestyle. And she wanted to kind of pivot away, because the main thing was she didn't ask herself the question, if I were to make 10 sales, 20 sales, 50 sales, 100 sales of this thing within a week, could I sustainably, continuously make it? And that's not just one product that I'm talking about either. That is your whole shop. So if it's jewelry, if it's knitted stuff, if it is t-shirts, if it is, I don't know, wallets, journals, footwear, whatever, make sure that it is a product or a type of generic product category that you could sustainably make over and over and over and over again. Okay. The third consideration would be the profitability, which I love that word. It's such a profitability. It's such like a nice word. It rolls off the tongue. I don't know why I like it so much. But it is the profitability of the item, of the business. Now, a lot of people, I think, will start a business, and when they start getting sales, they're like, yay, success, I've made it, I've arrived. And then they look at their like profit and loss, maybe, or maybe they have like a nice little spreadsheet that like tracks the income, their expenditure, all that kind of thing. And they look at the profit and they're like, oh my God, I've literally made no profit. Like, what even is this? And I think there is two levels of the world of business when you're like initially thrown into it. The first one is creating the business and getting your first sales. And you're like, yes, amazing. The second layer is actually making money. They're two very different things. And that's why I talk all the time about having an expensive hobby versus having a thriving business. Because at the end of the day, profit is the lifeblood of your business. So that's a massive question. You know, if you were to create a knitted baby jumper, and it cost you maybe £3 and maybe 3 hours to make, if you sold that at £15, you're not making anywhere near enough what you need to be making. If you are selling it at £50, are you making the amount of profit that you need to be making? And this is taking into account things like your wages, things like any wholesale ordering that you might want to do eventually down the line. This might be taking into account any sales you want to run. There is something that I like to include called an oops charge, and that is basically a little percentage of every sale you add on to account for any mistakes that you make, because we are human, we're not robots, right? So it's basically just a little amount on each order. It's not like a tax on every order or anything like that. It's just a little wiggle room just in case one order you have to remake, you have to resend, you have to refund. It's just there as a nice little safety blanket, right? There's lots of other things involved with pricing. So make sure that it is a profitable product, because I really don't think that enough people, really dig into that fact, okay? The next thing to consider would be, and this is very much switching gears now into marketing, okay? Because yes, you will have to market your products, whether you like it or not. And I know that a lot of people are like, I just want to make cool things. I don't want to have to market them as well. Like selling myself, ew, that sounds gross. And honestly, like there are two different types of marketers in this world. There are push marketers and pull marketers, and you can very easily tell the difference between the push and the pull. The people who push are gaslighters. They are people that will tell you without their tips and without their knowledge you will never succeed, and you will never learn, and you'll never do this and you'll never do that, and I often find that there are some like let's say diet companies and like diet shake companies and all those kinds of things, like meal delivery people who will use the push tactic to kind of make you think that you will not have any success unless you enroll on their program, you buy their products, whatever. That's very different to pull. Pull marketers are people who focus on attraction rather than pushing people towards buying. So they will look at, okay, I want to make sure that I am showing off the best of the business, the best of the brand, the best of the products, to really make sure to attract people in and make sure that it is aligned with who they are. You know, there's nothing wrong, and I will say this over and over again, I will say that there is nothing wrong with selling your products when you are pulling rather than pushing, because pulling, there's no force behind it. You are shouting your own product's praises, your own business praises from the rooftops, and there's nothing wrong with that. Then you will naturally attract the right people who are aligned with that, okay? It's very different to the push, which I've already talked about. So turning your attention to marketing is these products, whether it's jewelry, t-shirts, I don't know, literally like candles, crystals, or anything else, knitted baby wear. Are you able to continuously talk about this thing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And this is potentially like 3 to 4 content pieces a week. And I'm not saying you have to talk about knitted cardigans for the rest of your life. And, there are lots of like nuances around this. There's lots of little things, like you could talk about the yarn that you use, the buttons that you use, how you would style it, all these types of things. Safety, there's lots of different angles that you can come at this with. And there's nothing wrong with you recycling content either, okay? But could you do this business for the next 5 years of your life and talk about it enthusiastically in order to pull people towards you? And that is a very loaded question. No one knows what they're going to be doing 5 years from now, but it is something that I think a lot of people will do, is that they'll start creating jewelry. And then they will start to kind of realize that it's not just about throwing up a website, an Etsy shop, not on the high street, whatever, and expecting sales to come in. There is a lot more involved in that. And one of those big things is, how do I bring people in? And is, how do I market my products? And a lot of this can stem back from, what should I sell? Am I selling the right product? Am I aligned? And I really 100% believe and stand by the products that I am actually making. Because if you don't, and if you're not, then eventually that is going to show, and people are going to pick up on that energy where you're selling something that you don't quite believe in, you don't quite know in and out, you're not really sure. So I know I'm going to get asked, okay, Steph, well, I love the products that I make. I know that they are good, but I just don't know whether I could talk about this and create like 3 to 4 content bits and pieces a week and actually talk about this thing, which is a fair point. And I know that's an overwhelming thought, is to having to talk about this forever and ever and ever. So what I would say is something really useful that I do is I actually use the pieces for a week, a month, 2 months, and I'll actually like use it and integrate it into my life, and I'll take notes. It's kind of like, I guess, like field work, really. You're like testing your own products. So let's say if it's like candles, I will make the candle, and I will put it in my living room, in my bathroom. I will light it, and I'll take note of, okay, what time of day am I actually using this? What's coming to mind when I am using this product? What is it that I am loving about this product? Why am I drawn to this particular scent? What is happening as a result of me using said product, and all that sort of stuff. You could also do this with your family and friends as well, and actually give them a few of your products to try and get them to do the exact same thing. Get them to write notes about what they use it for, how they're using it, how they're feeling. And all of these things are absolute gold when it comes to marketing your products and actually really looking at the value that they have in people's lives. And I really think that it is something that not a lot of people do. I think we always have this really cool thing that we can make, then our friend or someone or your Aunt Judy is like, oh, you should open up an Etsy shop, that'd be really cool. And then you kind of think about it for a few weeks and you decide, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And then you kind of look back and think, okay, I need to know how to do all this stuff like target market and marketing, all this sort of thing, So those are all the things that I would say to consider when asking the question, what should I sell? I also think a really big thing coming off of this as well is understanding why you started to make your product in the first place, because reaching into those feelings, reaching into the reason why you started making the thing that you make, or the things plural that you make, is really useful, because then when it comes to marketing to others, you can then kind of look back and think, yeah, you know what, I was really disheartened with the awful baby clothes that were out there and the fact that they weren't made out of natural fibers and they just didn't have that vintage look that I really loved, and that I really kind of always envisioned raising my child in this kind of vintage style. So then looking at that and kind of thinking back to, okay, why did I start to make the thing in the first place, and why did I really start to explore creating it myself? It's really worth making a note of that too. One other massive consideration to have too is You should also look at the financial availability for being able to do said thing. If it's going to be costing you £1,000, £5,000, £10,000 to start up the business, then obviously ideally the profitability of that has to be very, very high. One thing that I will say, and that I have always said, is that you don't need to overstretch yourself financially to start up a business in the hopes that the more you put into it, the better the business idea is in terms of how profitable it will be. I have never taken out any loans or anything like that in terms of business. I've never done business loans, grants, or anything like that. And I do truly believe that you don't need to overstretch yourself to have a business and to grow a business that is scalable to as high or as low as you like, So that's another thing as well, is to really look at how much is this going to cost me to start up? How much is this going to, even if you have a business already and you're thinking about adding a new product line, there are costs involved there as well. And it's not just financial cost, it's also time cost, it's also energy costs, and it's also opportunity cost as well. Because if you're spending your time doing something, it means that inevitably you are going to end up having to say no to something else. And that could be, I don't know, guesting on a podcast. It could be writing a blog post for someone. It could be, something else, right? And this is something that I recently have learned the hard way, and it is a lesson that keeps rearing its ugly head for me, and that is very much looking at opportunity costs and the fact that if you keep saying yes to things, eventually you're going to have to turn down something that you really want to do, but you've already committed to several other things, and you can't, you're only one person, you can't clone yourself and stretch yourself way too thin. So there's always that to consider as well, which is nothing is ever coming for free in terms of creating a new product line, bringing a business to life. There is always some kind of cost involved there. And also as well, what I will say is that, if you're listening to this and you are thinking about opening up a second business or a third one, is I would always say, it's great that you have ambitions and it's great that you have all these ideas and that is fab. And I think as creative souls, we are always thinking of new things and that is great. And that is really by and large what makes us different to every other business out there, and why I really only work with handmade business owners, because they are so different to the other business coaches that you see out there, and the stuff that they teach just doesn't work with handmade businesses or handmade business owners, right? But is that there's opportunity cost there as well. If you just have the one shop, you are then putting everything and your all into that one shop. If you've got two, you're then all of a sudden putting 50% less effort in. And what is that going to mean for quality, for the amount of listings, for the amount of SEO research you're going to do, for the amount of marketing you're going to do, all this kind of thing. So also consider that as well if you are someone who already has a shop or another business or, something like that, and you are thinking about doing something else, because that is a major thing to keep in mind. So my lovelies, I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and I'd really love it if you will consider following me, subscribing, basically doing all the things that you need to do depending on where you're listening to this to make sure that you get pinged or notified whenever a new episode goes up. I would love to hear from you over on Instagram as well. I'm always in my DMs, so sneak me a little hi and let me know if you've enjoyed this. And also as well, leave me a review. That would be so kind of you. It just makes sure that the podcast isn't a waste of my time, effort, energy, money, and people actually get to see it and listen to it, and it actually helps others out there as well. Thank you so much for tuning into How to Be a Handmade Boss. And if you're eager to boost your Etsy sales within just 7 days, then be sure to join my most popular free training at handmadebosses.com/conversion. You can also find the link in the show notes as well. Keep an eye out for our next episode, where we'll be continuing our journey towards handmade business success together. And until then, keep crafting and stay inspired, because the world really does need those special creations that only you can make.